Hey, how's everybody doing today? This is Mark Brody, and I'm back for another episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk. And I am honored and it's such a pleasure to have my guest on for this episode, Heidi Solomon-Orlick. Heidi, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much for carving out some time to talk with us today. Heidi, you are a busy person all the time. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, what you're up to these days?
Yeah, just a tad bit busy.
Okay.
But I think it's better than the alternative, I guess. As you know, I've been in the customer experience BPO industry going on 35 years, so I'm definitely showing my age. Seen a lot of change over that time.
Yes.
I currently serve as Senior Vice President of Business Development for Arise Virtual Solutions, which is a gig CX BPO company. And
Excellent.
I've been with them just about a year.
Okay.
It's been a phenomenal experience. And then I'm also founder and CEO of a company called Girls Who Sell, whose mission is to close the gender gap in business to business sales and build the largest pipeline of diverse early stage female sales talent. Um, Hopefully we'll be
Excellent.
able to talk a little bit more about that today.
Yes,
Super
definitely.
excited, obviously something I'm super passionate about.
And I believe you have a book that you wrote um, that kind of supports the whole mission and mission, vision, values of your company. Is that correct?
I published a book last year. It's actually the second book that I worked on, but this is specifically around sales.
Okay.
It's called Heels to Deals: How Women Are Dominating in Business to Business Sales. And I'll tell you, we're an organization that, as I mentioned, is really focused on trying to get, not only get more women into sales, but more
Uh-huh.
diverse, women from diverse backgrounds into sales. And it's hard because even
Yep.
though women only represent about 35%
Uh-huh.
of individuals that are in professional sales, if you overlay any kind of diversity statistic, like
Hmm.
women of color, it's in the low single digits. And so that's
Oh,
sort of my
wow.
life mission, is to help solve for that. And and so, it's really hard when we're talking to college and high school age young women in
Yeah.
diverse communities to convince them that sales is a viable career choice when they don't see a lot of people that look like them. And
Hmm.
I believe that representation matters and you can't be what you can't see. And so
Yes.
Heels to Deals was born out of that, and we compiled the stories of about 33 women from around the world, very diverse backgrounds, um, and just to share their stories and provide guidance and it's really amazing. What started out though as kind of a storytelling mission.
Right.
What became really interesting is just to look at all the different backgrounds of the women that are in this book,
Yes.
to discover how we each came into professional sales is really unique. I mean, women escaping generational poverty or abusive relationships, or becoming, a single mom in high school, and, just story after story after story. And somehow we all discovered sales. So it's
You
pretty
know,
cool.
it's so inspirational. I mean, as you kind of going through like some of the different backgrounds that are contained in the book, and I view sales kind of like I do the contact center industry. I don't think any of us really went to school in with hey, I want to work in the contact center world. Um,
Right.
you know, I
Said
mean,
nobody ever.
exactly,
Maybe
exactly.
now.
And back when you and I started when we were like
Definitely.
2 and 3 years old, yeah, that definitely wasn't an option.
No, definitely was
Um,
not a thing.
no, and but I think that you can go to school, you can get a degree in some sort of sales and marketing and whatnot. Um, but a lot of folks don't really understand what's all entailed in being truly a professional salesperson. Um, and for women, I can definitely see, especially diverse women, it's like or women with diverse backgrounds, it can be a little bit more challenging and daunting because to have, I think in any professional um, situation, you always want to have a mentor that can really help you along, especially early on in your career. And 7%, that's an amazing statistic. Um,
Yeah, actually, it's less than that of women of color. So if you look
wow.
at, it's in the low single digits. And listen, the facts are, sales gets a bad rap, right?
Yep.
And probably rightly so. If you
Mhm.
look at the origin of sales and Wolf of Wall Street and kind of the used car salesman mentality. So a lot of what we do with Girls Who Sell University through our hashtag Explore Sales program is spend a lot of time re-educating and demystifying and debunking some myths about what
Mhm.
professional sales is and what professional sales isn't, because women actually, as we've gone and now really understand the power of emotional intelligence, of relationship building, of women have the innate skills to really be successful. In fact, the numbers show that women consistently outperform, and we love our men and our allies, but the facts are that women consistently outperform men in professional sales, and I believe it's because we do have this sort of innate skill to be active listeners, to really understand how to problem solve, to create customized solutions, to build trust, to build relationships. And not that men don't, because some men are really
No.
good at it as well. But in general, that's the case. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I think, we need to continue to educate people about the benefits of having a career in sales, and the stories in Heels to Deals really showed that as a way that, one, sales is life skill, so you can use it in a
Yep.
lot of different ways, right? Not just to sell a product or a service. If you probably know this, if you've ever negotiated bedtime, with a 3-year-old, you will know that your sales training comes in handy. But anyway,
Definitely. We
but
when I was in
it's really, and to achieve financial independence, right? And you don't necessarily have to have a degree to be successful in sales either. So
correct.
a lot of benefits to a career in sales.
I we used to when I was in the collections world, debt collections world,
Mhm.
we would always tell people who had never had a job in collections, that it's a skill that you will use far past whenever you're working in this industry.
Yeah.
One, it's an industry that's never going to go out of style. It may change and morph, but I view sales in much the same way,
Hmm.
where you have to learn how to um, build those trusting relationships. The days of cold calling are way gone. If you're not out there building those trusting relationships, and being authentic about it as well, you're not going to be as successful as somebody that's a lot more authentic and genuine. Um, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, they say people buy from people they like, but frankly,
Yes.
and that's true. But
Yes.
I think that maybe more important is they buy from people they trust. So,
Yes. I love it. Now you've been in this industry for or you've been in a professional industry for years or for a few years now.
mm,
Um, can you talk a little bit about leaders who supported you as you ascended throughout your career? Um, this kind of carries over to or carries back from the thought of women leaders or women in sales getting that mentorship
mhm.
as they're up and coming. Can you talk a little bit about some folks that may have um, supported and mentored you and the importance of that as you're an up and comer?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely key. I mean, I obviously when I started out in professional sales in the BPO industry, which remains, very male dominated even today, I didn't have a lot of female mentors.
Hmm.
Interestingly enough, my first mentor, and I won't, it's a bit of a long story, but was when I was in college and I decided that I wanted to go into the advertising agency business, which was also very male dominated back in I guess that would have been the late 70s, early 80s. And so there was one woman, Mary Lawrence Wells, that was like the first female CEO and president of an ad agency. And I decided that I wanted to meet her. So I did my first official cold call and I picked up the phone and called her. And ironically, she ended up hiring me. I was looking to do an internship, but I took a year off of school and went and worked for her back then, and she was absolutely phenomenal, just this incredible powerhouse. And the way that she navigated through sort of the male dominated type of environment, but also, back then had to carry a lot of the household responsibilities, even like listen, you'd think would change, but even fast forward all these years later, and it still is that way today. That's why millions and millions of women were forced to leave the workforce during the pandemic. But don't get me started on that. But anyway, so she was sort of my first mentor, and gave me really an opportunity and a shot. And then, I didn't have a lot of female mentors throughout my career in the BPO industry, but I had a lot of really good male mentors that helped me a lot along the way, saw my potential, which was so important because I think potential is viewed differently in a woman than it is in a man, in some ways. And so I was very grateful to have mentors and sponsors. I kind of see the two different things. Mentors are individuals that you can sort of talk to and share everything with and get some guidance and advice and share the good, the bad, the ugly. But sponsors are the ones that have your back and are advocating for you when you're not in the room. And so I really had a lot of those along the way. My strongest female mentor in the BPO sector, though, is Tony Portman, who was the prior CEO of Stream Global Services, which then got sold, is now part of Concentrix. And she's actually in my book. From the day that I met her, we talked and talked, and she was at the end of my interview. We talked for hours. I missed my flight. And she said to me, not only do I want you to work for my company, but I want you to be my friend. And so
That's
that was
huge.
over 20 years ago, and we're still super, super good friends. So
That is huge.
yeah, yeah, and she's absolutely a phenomenal human. She's been so supportive of Girls Who Sell. Like I said, she's in my book.
Yep.
But I think, I think it's absolutely critical. And I'm all about mentoring. So at
Hmm.
Arise, we have a We Mentor program as part of our women's ERG, which is We at Arise.
Yep.
And so I'm a mentor for that. And I just think it's so important to give back and help lift up the next generation
Yes.
of women or men that are coming behind you, because the youth are our future, right? Like,
Yep.
so
And
that's
and I love the way you differentiated there between a mentor, and I think a lot of people understand what a you know the purpose of a mentor, um and a sponsor, because
mhm.
the sponsors may not be the people that you would normally view as a mentor. They're the ones that really see you and what you're able to deliver and how you interact. They're the fly in the wall. In some cases, they could be the fly in the wall. They're just observing.
Yeah, I believe literally what I said is they're the ones that are advocating for you when you're not
Hmm.
in the room, and that's incredibly important. So when the executive leadership gets together and they're talking about future projects, you need that person to say, hey, I think
Yes.
Mark would be the perfect person to lead that, or they bring you into the room and they sponsor you into meetings and projects and things that you can excel at and get some exposure. And
Yes.
you need both, right?
Yeah.
Like you need both. And I think as leaders, it's incumbent upon us. I view it now, particularly at the stage of my career that I'm at, it's my responsibility to be both a mentor and a sponsor, to not just women, but women and men that are, that are starting to make their way up the executive leadership ladder, and hopefully, be able to leave corporate America and the world a little bit better place than how I found it.
I love it. Now, couple questions here. So some of the biggest challenges that um, women leaders faced when you first started off, versus what women leaders are facing today as challenges. What are some of the differences that as you think back? I mean, you'd say, "Man, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore." Or, like you said, it in certain situations, I mean, it hasn't changed. As your pandemic example, was a great illustration of that. So, what are some things that may have changed, improved from 20, 25, 30 years ago versus today?
I wish I could tell you that I have seen more change,
Uh-huh.
25 to 30 years, um, but I don't think I think we've come, um, I think we've made progress, but
Yep.
I think that we still have a long ways to go. So when I was, when 35 years ago, when I was, getting into sales,
Hmm.
obviously, sales were getting done, on the golf course and in the strip clubs and cigar bars. And it wasn't a place that I necessarily felt comfortable hanging out. So I had to be very intentional in becoming an expert, a product expert, and really knowing my business and earn the right for business based on my knowledge, not on my ability to schmooze. And by the way, I suck at golf, so that was never going to be an option anyway for me. And to the chagrin of my dad, who was a scratch golfer and had visions of father-daughter, golf tournaments, and
Yes.
it just never happened. So one of the things about, and I've said this in other interviews, one of the things about being the only woman in the room is that you're the only woman in the room, right? And
Yep.
so to me, very early on, I recognized that as an actual competitive advantage, and that I was
Mm.
going to utilize it to my benefit
Yep.
in a very male dominated world, to yeah, to sell successfully. Fast forward, I do think sales has come along, a long way. I think we, um, you know, because of HR challenges and things,
Yes.
maybe not as many deals are getting done on the golf course or in the strip bars as they were. And so, I think that there is, that kind of the framework of how sales gets done,
Mm.
particularly now that we've moved to, a virtual or hybrid environment, and
Yep.
is very different, right?
Mhm.
So, um, you know, versus just, kind of being in the room or traveling and, hosting a site visit or going to a client location. Now we've had to adapt to, virtual selling strategies, which is completely different. So I've
Yeah.
seen those things change, but I mean, Mark, I'd love to tell you that I've seen a complete transformation, but we haven't. In fact, I think we've gone backwards in a lot of cases since the pandemic, with over 5 million, 5.4 million plus women exiting the workforce. What I have seen is that, I think the silver lining to that is there's a lot of women that are stepping into entrepreneurship, that are deciding to exit corporate. So I think that's good. I think we've made a little bit of headway in terms of equity, pay equity, but we're still not there. It's still, the 70 some odd cents, maybe I don't know the exact number today, but a dollar that a man makes with the same background. So I think there's opportunity there. I think the positive thing is that at least diversity, equity, and inclusion is on the agenda. It's getting talked about in boardrooms. We are seeing more women, step into, board level positions. But I just posted an article the other day that where there's a huge gap now is, even though we've made a little bit of progress at the C level and in board level positions. And by the way, it's still only like 12% are there, but it's an increase. But where we've seen a major drop is in the VP and senior VP levels. So at the lower levels, we're seeing women, and maybe at the higher levels, but in the mid-level, that mid-level leadership range, it's a big problem. It's a big problem right now. And that, I think, is because so many women in that level did exit the workforce during the pandemic. So I know I tried to cover a lot of ground there.
No, that's awesome.
Changes, but I think there's still a lot of work to do. And it's got to be, companies need to be very intentional about their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. It's not just a box to check.
And people talk a lot about DEI, and the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind that aren't familiar with the DEI practice is they automatically go towards one box or one group versus another group, and it's an us versus them type of scenario. But diversity, equity, inclusion is not just about race or gender or cultural background or sexual preference or anything like that. It's all of it,
All of the above,
and all of
right?
the above. And it's really focused on, in my opinion, I'm definitely not an expert in this field at all. But from what I've read, from what I've seen, from the conversations I've had, it's really giving opportunity to people to be the best self that they can be and the best professional that they can be, and not limiting based on bias.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. That's a hard hill to overcome for a lot of folks. From
Yeah,
what I
it is. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we all have bias, right? Like,
Yes.
we all have inherent bias.
Yep.
But I think being aware of that bias
Hmm.
is at least a starting point.
Yep.
And asking the right questions, like, why, why does my team look the way my team does, right?
Yes.
Am I hiring people that just look like me? Am I giving other individuals consideration? And I'm not advocating for, I believe you still have to hire the right person for the job, but I think the intentionality behind it and being sure that you're being equitable and that you are getting creative in the way that you're doing your recruiting outreach, the way that you're the language that you're using in your recruiting ads, the qualifications and requirements that you're laying out as a part of your jobs ads are really important, because you may not be doing it intentionally, but you may, based on the way that you're positioning things, may unintentionally be sort of I don't know, excluding whole groups of people that you didn't even realize you were excluding. So It's got to
Like
start with
that.
awareness. It's got to start with education. I think you got to be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations, and you have to listen, right? Like, those of us with white privilege, that we have to just call out the elephant in the room, and recognize that we do have this privilege and that we don't have all the answers. And so it's really important. I think we need to put front and center diverse communities above all else, to be honest.
It's I love when you talked about listening, and it's great to have those conversations, but if you're not taking words and really listening and hearing, you can hear what anybody says, but are you truly listening to what people are saying, and then turning that listening into action,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then changing, being able to change mindsets and change direction, is so important, with being intentional in how you're listening. Um, I know there were some, like, there's a lot of training classes that you and I have probably been through, and some of those, some of the training classes. I mean, we're in those classes probably early on in our careers as hostages, so to speak. We were
Yeah,
told that we needed to go there, and
right.
so our ears weren't tuned into really listening and learning and immersing ourselves, and that's why I think there's a lot more awareness, today, about the importance of not just attending, not just being having a seat in a conversation, but truly listening, learning, and being able to apply and impact others in a positive way.
Yeah, I
So
I
important.
agree with that
Yeah.
100%.
So you've had a very successful career, over the years,
I like to
and
think so.
I'm I'm particularly interested in as you're getting, as you're at this stage in your career, um, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self X, and it would have helped you navigate your career in in a certain way, what would that thing or things be that you wish you could tell your younger self today?
It would probably be to take more risks. I
Okay.
think, um, I just by nature am
Hmm.
somewhat risk averse, and
Hmm.
um, and so although some might look at my career and say, that I did take risks, but from my from my perspective,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and just life in general, I think, I probably would have taken a little more risk.
Okay.
I think doing, I got into entrepreneurship late in the game.
Hmm.
That's something that I, you know, maybe would have done a little bit sooner. But to be honest, I'm pretty happy with, my life and who I
Yeah.
am, and how my career progressed. And I feel very blessed to be where I am, and to, so I don't know. I mean, like, there was, some ups and downs in my careers, along the way,
Hmm.
but but I don't look at them as failures. I look at them as learning opportunities. And
Yes.
so and building blocks. So every
Hmm.
time, something didn't work out, I just was like, okay, well, what did I learn? Right. And how can I
Yeah.
apply that to the next situation, so I don't make the same mistake again? And I make other mistakes,
Yeah.
but I won't
And
make
it's
the
okay.
same one twice. I won't make the same one twice. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I just think, my hope, when I look back at my career, everything's been sort of a stepping stone progression, and there
Yeah.
hasn't been one direction that I've gone in that didn't end up becoming a building block for where I'm at today.
I love it. I love it. Um, you know, Heidi, you and I have talked about some passion projects that you're involved with. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about, a passion project that you're involved with, and why is it so important to you?
Well, outside of Girls Who Sell, which is definitely
Yes.
my passion project, most recently, and this is a really important and relevant conversation because May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month,
Okay.
and uh, I was recently diagnosed with skin cancer. And I don't know if you can tell, I got makeup on, but I had skin cancer surgery for my basal cell carcinoma about, well, this week is 9 weeks, so not that long ago. And I just, if it's okay, I'd like to share, because I was shocked. Like,
Yep.
I grew up in California. I was always on the beach. I was blonde hair surfer girl. I rode
Nice.
horses, laying out in the sun with the baby oil and iodine, right? With the big what were those things called, with like the tin foil that you would,
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
remember those things, like,
Mm-hmm.
years ago? Yeah, that was me. And I really have had, I knew I had to use sunscreen, right? But I was never that educated until recently about the impacts of skin cancer. And so now I'm evangelizing the importance for early detection, um and to get checked. I'll give you some interesting statistics,
Okay.
um and I'll bring it up. But 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer by the age of 70. More than 2 people die of skin cancer in the US every hour.
Wow.
Every hour
I
in the
did not
US.
know that.
Um, when that skin more people are diagnosed with skin cancer each year in the US than all other cancers combined. And there's a whole bunch of stats, but when detected early, the 5-year survival rate for melanoma is 99%. So early detection is really important. Now, there's non-melanoma skin cancer, which is what I had,
Mhm.
which won't kill you, but it can completely disfigure you if not caught early, right?
Yep.
So when you go in for your Mohs surgery and you have to have it, and there's a couple of different variations of non-melanoma skin cancer. BCC, what I had, is probably the most common. What's also interesting is that um, um, I found that, just to give you, so pre-cancer. So again, this goes to early detection.
Hmm.
It's called as actinic keratosis, which is really just the fancy name for pre-cancer.
Okay.
So know your spots, right? So know your
Yes.
body, know your spots. If something's changing, because it could be pre-cancer, it's the most common pre-cancer, and it affects 58 million Americans a year. So this is my passion project. I'm really trying to use my voice and amplify the effects of skin cancer. And just like you get your teeth cleaned and you
Hmm.
get your um you know your breasts checked and your
Yep.
and whatever, go in and get a full body scan and be sure that you get checked, because early detection will save your life, no question
I
about it.
I'll tell you, my wife um was uh encouraging me to go get checked. So I went ahead and got checked, and thankfully there was nothing that was that was a concern because I kind of I grew up in New Hampshire, and I grew up out at Hampton Beach, and
Yep.
and we would just hang out on the beach, and you're right. At that time, it was all about the oil and all this other stuff, and see how dark you can get, and being active when I was younger, it was always about being outside, and I never really used any skincare products.
Right.
And I golf now. And I'm horrible at it. And so I'm
You
like,
need
oh,
to do
I
it. Do you know that having
exactly.
5 or more sunburns doubles your risk for melanoma?
I did not know
Just
that.
5 or more sunburns doubles your risk for melanoma.
I get probably
So
one a year. Um, so
wear your
I know,
sunscreen.
I'm learning. And so now I have sunscreen in
Even
my bag.
it's even in the shade in the when it's cloudy out, people are like,
Yes,
"What? It's cloudy out, and I don't have to wear sunscreen." It's actually can be even more dangerous. So
yes,
anyway, obviously this is something, but listen, Mark, seriously, if one person, even
yes.
if at least one person who's listening to your show
Uh-huh.
hears this and says, you know what, this looks a little funky, I'm gonna go get it checked, because mine was like a little dot, it looked like
Yep.
the size of a pinhead, and when they went in there underneath, it was the size of a $50. That's why I have a
Wow.
4.5 inch scar on my face right now. Had I done it earlier, I would not be in the situation that I'm in right now. And so if one person listening to your show today decides to go and get checked, hopefully more will,
Yeah,
and you and I save a life, then you know what? Then
it's well
this
worth it.
is totally worth it.
It's worth it. And
Thanks for
I
allowing me
cannot
to
I
evangelize.
can't yeah, I cannot support that enough. I mean, I think it's so
That's the
important.
end of our, we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming. That's the end of my public service announcement.
Well, and if you have a link that we could share out in the comments when this is posted, please consider learning more, or even donating a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
the Skin
you know,
Cancer Foundation is a
yeah,
fabulous organization. I've started to get pretty actively, trying to get active, involved,
yeah.
made donations. They have all kinds of really amazing
Mhm.
educational resources on their website, so we can drop it in the notes, but it's the Skin Cancer Foundation is definitely the place to go.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we've gotten to that point of our episode here. I call it the speed round. Are you
Oh,
ready
no.
for some
Okay.
questions? All right, you
Oh,
ready?
no. Okay. I'm ready.
All
I'm
right.
ready.
So, what fact about Heidi would our viewers be most surprised to learn about you?
Hmm. Um, that I was an alternate on the US equestrian team.
That
Who
is
invented?
awesome. That is awesome.
I don't think
And
anybody knows
no, that now everybody does.
that. Everybody knows.
Everybody
All
that's
right.
tuning in.
That's cool.
That is awesome. So,
I was
what got you
going to
into the
say
sport?
that I collect flying pigs, but I like the equestrian thing better, maybe. But those are two things.
Awesome. What got you into the equestrian sport?
When I was young, really young, like 8 or 9 years old, my parents sent me to day camp, and it was one of those day camps where you'd go and do macrame, and then you do this and that fishing, and I
Yeah,
just hung out at the horses, and the one of the trainers at the camp said, you know what, your daughter is kind of a natural, maybe you should consider getting her some horseback riding lessons, and that was it.
that is
So
awesome.
I trained at Foxfield riding stables, and yeah, I evented, so I did dressage and stadium jumping and cross country.
That is
So
awesome.
it was awesome.
That is probably
Incredible,
one of the
an
best facts.
incredible privilege to
Mhm.
have an opportunity to do that and compete. And probably says a lot about me as a salesperson. I'm highly
Yes.
competitive. So,
Yeah.
and always have been.
I love it. And you're not an alternate in anybody's universe now. So
Yeah,
and
it's actually funny, and I know we're probably over time, but when Burkton Nemeth was the head of the U.S. equestrian team when I rode in the trials, and my horse had a dropped hip, so he had some challenges in doing all of the gymnastics that they were asking us to do. And so what he was doing, he was switching people onto different horses just to kind of see, is it a horse issue or is it a person issue, right? And the end of the third day, I was still in the top three, and he called me over, and he was this really like a German European, very intimidating guy, right? And he, Heidi, could you come over here? And I was like, came over my horse, and he was like, what's wrong with it? I think you got some great talent, like real talent, right? But what's wrong with your horse? And how many horses do you have? That was his question. So I was like, well, my horse has a dropped hip, and he's my only horse. But if I make the team, I
yeah.
know that I could get more. I'll find more horses, right? That was my first sales pitch, official
Yeah.
sales pitch, outside of selling Girl Scout cookies.
That is
I still
awesome.
didn't. I didn't win the deal, but I did make. I was an alternate, so that's pretty cool.
That just to say that I mean, honestly, that's one of the best facts that I've ever heard on Coffee Talk with Brohawk.
Cool.
Um, so if you could choose to stop aging at any age, what age would that be?
I wouldn't.
I love it. I love it. And it goes back to the always learning, always experiencing.
Yeah, yeah. I'm turning 64 this year, and I still learn every day. I consider myself sort of a wisdom warrior, and I wouldn't change it. Now, ask me that when I'm like 80, I might say I wouldn't have mind stopping it, in my 70s. But right now,
Yeah,
I think
there's too much
it's
life
all a
left to
journey. It's
experience.
all a
Yeah.
journey.
Awesome, awesome. So after a stressful day, and everybody has them, what's your go-to tactic to unwind and just kind of detox from a day?
Um, I really like um that time of, sitting down. My husband's a chef by trade, and he does all the cooking. I suck at cooking. I suck more at cooking than I do at golf, actually. But which is saying a lot because I'm pretty bad. But he is a fabulous cook. And
Okay.
so I really like that time, that transition time, where I go into the kitchen, he's cooking, he's doing his thing. I might have a glass of wine or margarita
There you go.
or not.
Yeah,
But we play music and we talk and we catch up on our day and we share stories, and it's just this really nice. It's one of my I look forward to it every day. Just being able to have that time with him. So
that is awesome.
yeah, it's a way for me to make that transition from the work to home life. So
Excellent. I got to go back to the equestrian. Do you still have a
I still
horse?
ride. No, so my kids got into riding,
Okay.
and at one point we had 5 horses, and I actually got into breeding. So I was breeding warm
Okay.
bloods. I rescued a thoroughbred off of the racetrack, and I did dressage on her, and then I decided to breed her. So we had a bunch of babies, which we ended up selling. I got some pretty funny stories around that. We'll have to save that for the next
Actual coffee.
show, the next coffee shop.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, but then once they got they sort of lost interest and got into some other things. I decided to exit riding. It's pretty intense, and it's expensive, and I had 3 kids to put through college, but But
And
no, I have other passions now. I'm a master gardener, and
okay,
and I'm just, I'm involved in all my passion projects.
awesome.
So no more horses.
No more horses. Well, Heidi, this has been an absolute joy to chat with you today. I know we've been connected through LinkedIn for a number of years. And just a few weeks ago, we were out actually able to meet in person, and that
Yeah,
was awesome. Um, if someone wants to either get a copy of your book,
yeah.
Heels to Deals,
Mhm.
or just generally want to network with you and pick your brain on anything, what's the best way that they could connect with you?
Yeah, so Heels to Deals is sold on Amazon, or
Yep.
actually anywhere books are sold. So
Okay.
you can check that out. Um I am really active on LinkedIn and very responsive. So if you reach out to me and want to connect through LinkedIn, absolutely reach out. We are recruiting right now. I'm going to just do one plug for our next cohort for Girls Who Sell. So you can, it's a 100% scholarship based program that is subsidized by corporate sponsorship. So if you're interested in helping us build the next generation of sales leaders, go to www.girlswhosell.com, and that's girls with a Z, GIRLZ, who sell.com, and find out more.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we will definitely promote that out. And Heidi, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you very much for carving time out of your schedule to chat with me. And we'll have this out very very quickly. I think you bring up especially for Skin Cancer Awareness Month, if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, you're watching this episode, and you just want to click and find out a little bit more. Hey, I got a spot here, or something. What does this mean? Go to the website, skincancer.com, or skincancerawareness.com.
It's the Skin Cancer Foundation. So just go to skincancer.org.
Skincancer.org. Excellent.
Yep. And
And
they have a lot of really good information.
fantastic. Well, Heidi, thank you again. And
Thanks for having me. What a
no,
fun
thank
conversation. I appreciate it.
and I hope to not be several years before we meet again in person.
Oh no, hopefully soon, right?
Soon, definitely, definitely. All
All
right.
right.
Well,
Take
thank you
care,
all for
Mark. Thanks
tuning
so
in.
much.
Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye bye.
All right.